Hey guys, today I'm starting a 3-part series where I test my current build, an AMD Ryzen 7 7700 paired with the brand new GeForce RTX 5080, which I upgraded to from my old RX 5700 XT. We will be testing in 4K, 1440p and 1080p, but today we're starting with 4K, the resolution this card was really made for. Alright, let's quickly go over the test system. The motherboard is the ASUS ROG Strix B850G gaming Wi-Fi, a solid micro ATX board with PCIe 5.0 support, a 20 gigabit per second USB-C port and 4 M.2 slots, more than enough for a modern build. The CPU is the AMD Ryzen 7 7700, 8 cores, 16 threads, boosting up to 5.3 GHz. I grabbed it on AliExpress sale and for the price, it's hard to beat in terms of value. Cooling is handled by the DeepCool Assassin 4S White, a large air cooler rated for up to 250 watts, which is more than enough for this chip. For memory, I'm running 32 GB of DDR5 at 6000 MHz, two 16 GB Chinese Juhor sticks. Storage is a simple PCIe 3.0 NVMe SSD, carried over from my previous PC. And of course, the main highlight, the MSI GeForce RTX 5080 Ventus 3XOC. Powering everything is the Gigabyte Aorus Elite P1000W, an 80+ Platinum fully modular PSU with ITX 3.1 and PCIe Gen 5 support. Now let's spend a moment diving a bit deeper into the specs of the MSI GeForce RTX 5080. This card is powered by the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 5080 GPU with more than 10,000 CUDA cores. It has 336 texture units and 112 render output units, giving it strong rendering and pixel throughput. The GPU boost clock sits around 2640 MHz, helping it sustain high performance under load. For memory, it uses 16 GB of GDDR7 on a 256-bit bus running at an effective 30 gigabits per second, which result in roughly 960 GB per second of memory bandwidth. It is more than enough for high-resolution gaming. On the ray tracing side, the card features dedicated ray tracing cores, designed to accelerate real-time ray tracing performance, improving lighting, reflection, and global illumination in supported titles. Taken together, high CUDA count, solid render output units and texture mapping units configuration, fast GDDR7 with nearly a terabyte per second of bandwidth, strong boost clocks and dedicated ray tracing hardware. This places the RTX 5080 firmly in the high-end gaming bracket. Now the real question is, how well can the Ryzen 7 7700 handle a card like this? Let's find out. Before we jump into the gameplay test, friends, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a like, subscribe to the channel and drop a comment. It really helps this video reach more people. All gameplay was recorded using a capture card, so there is no performance loss during recordings. That said, this is not a laboratory-grade benchmark session, it's more of a real-world experience with my own build. And now let's quickly go through synthetic, some CPU and GPU benchmarks. In 3D Mark TimeSpy, this setup scores more than 25,000 points overall, with almost 32,000 points graphics score, showing that the RTX 5080 is performing exactly where it should. This score ranks higher than 94% of results, indicating solid overall performance for this configuration. In Still Nobot benchmark, the system scores 8,500 points with an average of 84 FPS in a graphic test. In AIDA64's CPU Queen benchmark, the Ryzen 7 7700 scores 127,000 points running at around 5.15 GHz under load. In AIDA64's memory benchmark, the DDR5 6000 kit delivers around 58 GB per second read, 78 GB per second write, and 59 GB per second copy speeds, with the latency at about 79 nanoseconds. In the Geekbench 6, the Ryzen 7 7700 scores 2869 points in a single core and almost 15,000 in multi-core. In a Geekbench AI, the system scores 37,000 in a single precision, 62,000 in half precision, and 28,000 in quantized workloads using the RTX 5080. In the Geekbench 6 OpenCL, the system scores 281,000 points, showing strong GPU compute performance from the RTX 5080. In the Geekbench 6 Vulkan, the RTX 5080 scores 248,000 points. Before we jump into the first game, just a quick note. In all titles where DLSS is available, I'm using DLSS version 4.5. Let's start with The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. At ultra ray tracing settings with DLSS turned off and hairworks disabled, the game still looks absolutely gorgeous, especially for a 2015 title. However, performance sits at around 43 stable FPS on average, which is playable but not exactly smooth. Now, once we switch DLSS to quality, things change quite a bit. We jump to a much more comfortable 66 frames per second on average without dropping image quality. Next up, PUBG. On ultra settings we're getting around 110 FPS on average, which is very comfortable for an online shooter. There are occasional drops to about 50 FPS, but they don't really affect the overall experience. Moving on to Fortnite. At Epic settings we're getting around 60 FPS on average, which sound decent at first. However, the 1% lows drop to around 38 FPS, and that's noticeable. It's still playable overall, but for a competitive online shooter it's not exactly ideal. Now let's talk about Red Dead Redemption 2. At max settings we're getting around 43 FPS on average, and the image quality looks absolutely stunning. There are drops to about 30 FPS in the 1% lows, but overall it's still playable for a slower paced game like this. Now once we enable DLSS in quality mode, we're looking at around 83 FPS on average, and honestly, there is no noticeable loss in visual quality. Now let's move on to Cyberpunk 2077. At maximum settings with path tracing enabled and no upscaling, we have to admit that even the RTX 5080 struggles here. We are looking at just 18 FPS on average, which is clearly not playable. Turning on DLSS in quality mode improves things quite a bit. We jump to around 37 FPS on average, with no drops below 30. That's at least usable. But once we enable frame generation at 4x, performance shoots up dramatically, all the way to around 133 FPS. That's where modern features really make a difference. With Forza Horizon 5, everything is pretty straightforward. At max settings, we're seeing well over 120 FPS on average, which is excellent. The game looks fantastic, and you can fully immerse yourself in the gameplay without worrying about performance at all. Moving on to Hogwarts Legacy. At ultra settings with ray tracing enabled, we're getting around 55 to 65 FPS in the intro scene with no noticeable drops. That's more than enough for a smooth and comfortable playthrough.
We're close now, it's just ahead. Steady yourself! Reparo! Almost there!
In Alan Wake 2 at maximum settings in native resolution with path tracing enabled, we once again see that even the RTX 5080 has its limits. Performance sits around 20 FPS, which is clearly not playable.
I don't want to slow you down.
Are you thinking of retiring? You know what happens to cops who say this is their last case.
Real funny, Anderson.
Stairs are out. You okay to jump down?
Switching DLSS to quality mode brings us to around 33 FPS. That's console-like experience.
Fucking nature. Gives me a headache. It's too much sky.
If we lower the ray tracing preset to low, we gain roughly another 10 FPS, which already makes a noticeable difference.
Should have brought an umbrella.
I like the rain. The only thing around here that feels like home.
You think the local law had the sense to put up a tarp?
If they did, next coffee's on me.
At the murder site. I did not want to swap.
And finally, by enabling 2x frame generation, the average climbs to around 75 FPS. At that point, the game feels smooth and fully playable, while still keeping most of its visual detail intact. In Counter-Strike 2 on very high settings, we're seeing around 290 FPS on average, which is more than enough for competitive play. With performance like this, you've got no excuses. You might as well start training for the next major. Now for Diablo IV. At maximum settings, with ray tracing enabled, we're seeing around 80 FPS on average. However, at the start of the session, there are noticeable stutters which disappear after about 5-10 minutes of gameplay.
What is this?
Lowering ray tracing to low boosts performance to nearly 100 FPS, making the experience much smoother overall. Moving on to Horizon Forbidden West. At maximum settings, the RTX 5080 delivers a stunning image along with around 84 FPS on average.
A lot of arrows in that machine. Better take a closer look.
In Stalker 2, on epic settings, we're getting around 42 FPS on average. Once we enable DLSS in quality mode, the average jumps to about 68 FPS, which already feels much smoother. And with frame generation turned on, performance nearly doubles, reaching around 114 FPS. Next up, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. At maximum settings with full path tracing enabled, the RTX 5080 delivers around 35 FPS. That's classic console style experience. But once we disable ray tracing completely, performance jumps all the way up to 116 FPS. That's a huge difference, and it clearly shows how demanding full path tracing can be. In Silent Hill 2 at maximum settings with ray tracing enabled, in the opening scene we are seeing between 25 and 40 FPS. It looks absolutely stunning, very detailed and atmospheric, but performance at that level makes the gameplay feels less comfortable than it should be. In Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 at max settings we're getting around 60 FPS on average. And for a slower paced, story-driven game like this, that's more than enough for a smooth and enjoyable experience.
Quick before I bleed out.
Grand Theft Auto 5 Enhanced. At maximum settings with ray tracing enabled, we're seeing around 77 FPS on average. And importantly, the 1% low stays above 60 FPS, so there are no noticeable stutters.
Homie, man, if you need some bread, I can hook you up with JB's tow truck. It ain't got glamour, but it's some money to be made.
So him and Tanya can smoke crack in peace? Homie, I'm good. Hey, dog, we be doing Simeon a disservice if we ain't test these rides out.
He ain't even gonna know if they good if we don't push him to the brink. You feel me? Keep busting, low.
Whatever you say.
Right, homie.
Yeah, whatever you say.
Up here, through the studio. Let's show these movie people how we do.
Oh, we filming shit here, huh?
Down this dirty motherfucker.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm schooling your ass, boy.
Hey, I'll come at you from the shoulders, homie.
Now let's look at Cronos, the new Dawn. At maximum settings with ray tracing disabled, we're getting around 43 FPS on average. That kind of console style performance, which doesn't feel particularly smooth on PC.
Evaluate whether you
Once we enable DLSS in quality mode, the average climbs to around 77 FPS, with occasional dips slightly below 60. That's a huge improvement and makes the game feel much more comfortable to play. Arc Riders at epic settings. We're getting between 75 and 90 FPS, which feels very comfortable. That's more than enough for a smooth match and solid gameplay experience. Next up, Carmageddon Rock Shift. At maximum settings, the RTX 5080 delivers around 90 to 100 FPS, which is more than enough for a smooth and enjoyable gameplay. Dying Light: The Beast. At maximum settings, the RTX 5080 manages only around 25 FPS, which is clearly not playable. Turning on DLSS in quality mode improves things to about 43 FPS on average. That's better, but still not what you would call comfortable. At the same time, there's clearly plenty of headroom left. Lowering a few settings or tweaking the configuration could easily push performance much higher. And finally, The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. At maximum settings in a lighter scene, we're seeing around 90 FPS on average, which is more than enough for a smooth and comfortable playthrough.
I know where you live, Alex. Oh, suck it. Oh, dang it. Dang it. I see you. Oh, dang it. In your face. Ow! Who taught you that? Your parents don't love you. Eat snow.
Overall, this RTX 5080 and Ryzen 7 7700 combo turns out to be a very solid high-end 4K build. In raster performance, it handles most modern titles at maximum settings without major issues, and once DLSS and frame generation are enabled, even the heaviest path-traced games become smooth and fully playable. At 4K, the system is clearly GPU bound, and the Ryzen 7 7700 keeps up just fine. However, at lower resolution like 1440p and especially 1080p, the CPU won't always be able to fully load the RTX 5080 to 100%. That said, performance will still be strong and more than playable, just not perfectly GPU limited in every scenario. So if you're curious how this combo behaves in 1440p and 1080p, stay tuned. The next two videos in this series are coming very soon. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel and drop a comment with your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow. Thanks for watching and see you soon.